Police officers of Reddit, what's the creepiest disappearance case you've ever been assigned to? Not a police officer, but my granddad was. He was a part of the police force in the 60s till the early 80s. Sometime during the 70s, he was assigned to a missing person case that had been ongoing for a while and had actually been reassigned due to the lack of new evidence. Him and his partner spent months on the case fighting for it to stay open. One day they went and searched the missing person's home again. It caused a lot of uproar with the family as they hadn't really moved his things or been into his home since the case had gone quiet. Anyway, they got permission almost a month after asking and found a handwritten receipt for a car in his bathroom bin. God knows why his bins weren't searched before unless it was just missed. They managed to track the guy down who sold him the car. He said that the missing person had mentioned that he was going to store his car in a garage till he had the money to insure it. He even gave them the name of the town he said the garage was in. They went to the town and got search warrants for every single rentable garage, even though they had no evidence he had ever rented one. After a couple of days, they found the car with the guy inside. Apparently, his body was almost mummified because of the lack of sun, air, and moisture. I can't imagine what the smell was like. But they think he accidentally killed himself while trying to do some work on the car. He would have had the garage door closed because his car wasn't insured. He didn't want anyone to see the car and steal it. It was stored in a rough neighborhood where the garages were cheap to rent. He also paid cash in hand, so he never had any receipts. So yeah, he died of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's painless, and basically you just fall asleep and then you die. He wouldn't have realized until it was too late. The guy was missing for 5 months, and he seemed to just disappear for no known reason. My granddad told me this when I was a kid, and it really scared me, that people can so easily just go missing or die and nobody knows where they are. Still kind of freaks me out. My grandfather was a policeman and a fireman at different points in his life. His spooky disappearance story actually came from his time as a fireman. He hasn't told me the story in a long while, so I'm a little fuzzy in the details, but here goes. His team gets called to a house fire in a small village, rural England. It's late at night. The fire is reported by a local who was walking home. Several other bystanders have arrived by the time the fire engine gets there, and there are multiple reports of screams for help from inside the building. They start to douse the fire, and 3 of the responders, including my granddad, enter the building via the back door to attempt to rescue the people trapped inside. The thing is, they don't find a soul. Nobody is there. They clear the whole place out, stop the fire, effectively make the building safe. Later on, it's confirmed that the fire started in the kitchen, likely the hob, where food was midway through being prepared. As far as anyone knew, the couple who lived there had been at home. Relatives had no idea where they might have gone that night. My granddad and his colleagues have a funny feeling, so they get local police properly involved. Crime scene investigation uncovers blood on the floor in one room, but any other evidence was destroyed in the fire. They can't confirm who the blood belongs to. It apparently didn't match the blood types of the 2 vanished residents. The fire department are very suspicious at this point, and apparently the police want to drop the investigation in favor of a manhunt for the missing people. But they end up expanding the investigation radius and find that apparently an unidentified van was parked outside the house that left just before the fire was reported. The investigation goes dead, but over a year later they find the burned remains of the man who lived there in a grave in the woods several towns away. They never found the woman, so it was suspected that she killed him and burned down the house to conceal it. They never figured out where the screams from inside the building were coming from, though. Not a cop, but my dad is. This isn't exactly a disappearance case, but a little. There was a little family in a neighborhood near me, and one morning they were all found dead. Not very many suspects, and almost no evidence to find the guy, except for a bloody $20 bill that was found in a local pawn shop, along with a few things in the pawn shop that had been owned by the family. They ended up tracking down the fingerprints to a man, we'll call him Randy. Well, Randy was nowhere to be found in his house. The police asked all his close friends and family members and eventually got the answer that he had gone on an Alaskan cruise that had been planned for months. Now, The police didn't know if he had purposely decided to murder and then leave, or if he had pre-planned the trip and then decided the murder, but at the moment he was in Alaska, and the police couldn't actually arrest him there because it was a different state and there were Maryland state police. And so they had to contact Alaska state troopers and alert them that Randy would be in the area. The Alaskan state troopers had to have the Maryland police there to arrest him too, so my dad had to fly all the way up to Alaska and wait for Randy's ship to dock. And when it did, they actually found more blood-stained money on him, along with multiple Rolex watches that he had either stolen from the family or from another house. Once they arrested him, they had to chain him up and fly him back, and the pilot almost refused Randy flying on his plane, but they did eventually get home. This happened almost 4 years ago. Randy went on trial this year. I'm pretty sure this is the story from the news point of view. I got it from someone who was there. Not exactly a cop/former cop. In fact, I was a firefighter in the military. In the interest of self-preservation, I will not be discussing the base/branch/names of those involved. At this point in my career, I was the director of emergency communications for the base. This meant I was in charge of police/fire/medical emergency and non-emergency communication. My main responsibilities included managing fire/police/EMS dispatchers, maintaining and monitoring base alarm systems, and reviewing reports and cross-checking the respective reports with the 911 calls and radio traffic to ensure that everything was accurate. This last duty was the most time-consuming. It was impossible to screen every call, so non-high priority calls were audited on a random basis, while high priority calls were scrutinized in great detail. I spent many hours slowing down, speeding up, and trying to make heads or tails of high-profile emergencies. High-profile emergencies included things like unexpected/unexplained deaths, terror threats made, attempted, or threatened against the base, fires resulting in loss of life or significant loss of property, and a handful of other things. I add that footnote because typically, these 911 calls are chaotic. Oftentimes, callers are experiencing the worst, most tragic, or stressful time in their life. My point being, it's often hard to understand the caller, let alone decipher what exactly they need. The incident. The dispatch center was manned 24/7, but only directly supervised during business hours. However, I was always on call for major incidents like those mentioned above. The night in question was a Saturday, and it was fairly late, around 1 a.m. Around 1 a.m., I heard a call toned out over the radio for a reported self-ending. The patient was pronounced dead on arrival. Self-terminations were one major incident that I was notified about by my dispatchers, but I was not always ordered to respond right then and there. Self-terminations were usually pretty cut and dry. I would need to make sure the report was shored up on Monday morning, but I had my best night dispatcher on duty, and I knew he wouldn't let me down. I got up, used the bathroom, and waited for the phone to ring. When it didn't, after about an hour, I grew worried and radioed in to remind my dispatcher to call me when he wasn't too slammed. The phone rang seconds later. The dispatcher said, "The deputy fire chief is here. He said we could all debrief on Monday and that one of the other dispatchers was called in to cover the remainder of his shift. He was upset by the whole situation and needed the rest of the night off." Not uncommon, especially when someone paints the walls while you're on the phone with them. I told him to get some rest and we'd talk on Monday. Something didn't feel right. I texted him and told him to call me as soon as he was in his car. He did. I first made sure he was okay. He said that he was not, but not to worry about him. I told him I'd been there before and if he needed to talk, he could. He said, "No, I don't think you have. This whole thing is messed up and you need to come and listen to the tapes." At this point, I'm worried. Like I said, this is my most seasoned, best dispatcher, and he's this shaken up. I got in my car and got to the dispatch center as fast as I could. This is what I recall from the report. Times are approximate. 1:17, report started. 1:17, dispatched medical/fire/police. Medical fire do not approach stage at blank street and wait for PD to declare scene safe. 1:18, Chief 2, Engine 3 responding code 3, PD on scene, scene safe, send medics and fire ASAP. 1:20, medics responding. 1:49, dispatch requests update from on scene. 1:50, patient DOA, suspected overdose. Handing Acne over to PD, clearing to quarters at this time. 1:57, report terminated. My first thought was, what is this? Someone died and I get a 7-line report? Then I pulled the scariest 911 recording I've ever had the displeasure of listening to. I will recount it to the best of my knowledge. It has been about a year since I have listened to it. Dispatch, 911, what is the address of your emergency? Caller, my wife's dead, can you come get her out of the house? Dispatch, sir, did you say your wife is dead? Caller, yes, she's behind the bedroom door. I can't get it all the way open, but she's dead. Dispatch, sir, I need your address and a good phone number in case we get disconnected. Caller, sure, it's blank. Dispatch, where exactly in the home is your wife? Caller, the bedroom. Dispatch, can you get into the bedroom from a window or door? Caller, nope. Dispatch, hold on, I'm sending help now, please stay on the phone. Dispatch, sir, can you hear me? Caller, yes, I can hear you fine. Dispatch, you said she's behind the door, can you open the door? Caller, no, her body is blocking it. Dispatch, can you tell me what exactly happened? Caller, she's been depressed and took all of her sleeping pills. Caller, they're here, thanks for all your help. Line disconnects. The thing that chilled me about this call was that the husband's voice was apathetic and relaxed. He didn't seem to care that his wife was dead. He was really calling to have the body removed, it would seem. As if his wife's limp, lifeless body was somehow posing him an inconvenience. He had no interest in trying to help save his wife at all. It had my dispatcher messed up, and it had me messed up. Reading the police report was much more informative and painted a better picture of what happened on scene. I was also tasked with interviewing everyone that was on scene to put into my comprehensive report. This is a summary of what I recall from the report and my interviews. The summary of events was consistent among all those that responded. A surreal scene. Responders arrived on scene to find the husband in the same lackadaisical state he appeared to be in on the phone. Multiple responders were disturbed by this. Important things noted upon observation of the scene included a full bathtub with a razor blade on the side of the tub and a wine glass that appeared to have fallen into the bathwater. It's also important to note that this was the spare bathroom and not the master bathroom. The body was found behind the door of the master bedroom. The police report stated that the husband had been out all day on a hiking trip and he came home and found his wife dead. His explanation for his strange behavior was that he was in shock. However, base records showed that the husband was granted access to base at 10:22 p.m., roughly 3 hours before he claims he discovered his wife's body. Additionally, he stated that his wife was depressed and had taken all of her sleeping pills, something he could not have known because the empty pill bottle was recovered from the nightstand. It was Ambien, and the prescription had been filled by the husband for his wife the previous day. It was appearing to be a murder committed by the husband, who had admittedly had marital issues with his wife. These issues were also known to his co-workers and friends. About 2 weeks later, I was told by one of the investigators that they had been taken off the case and it was going to be handled at a higher level. That was the last time I or anyone I know saw or heard from the husband again. His Facebook page was taken down, his kids went to live with his late wife's parents, and he disappeared without a trace. Everyone working the case was told that he was placed on a leave of hardship. There was never a court-martial, further action, or further information provided to anyone involved in the initial investigation. It still chills me to my core thinking about the whole thing. I was told not to ask questions and not to interfere with the investigation. It was now out of my hands and it would be handled at the higher level. I will always wonder if the military made the husband disappear and paid off the rest of his wife's family to make it go away. I will never know the answer to this mystery. I can only speculate. But man, just thinking about the 911 call makes me hope if he did indeed murder her, that military has him in a dark hole for the rest of his life. Too long, didn't read. Military husband kills his wife and makes it a self-termination. Does not do a good job and ends up getting murdered himself by the government.